everyone, my name's Michelle with the Book Dragon, and today we're joined by author Colin Eston, who's got a tour this week in the store and online, and also has a signing coming up on Saturday. Hello, Colin. Great to be with you today.
Hello, Michelle.
So I'm going to ask you some questions about your books and find out a little bit more about the Archer series.
Okay.
So you've got 10 books in your Archer series so far. Can you give
Yes.
our viewers an introduction of what to expect from the series?
Well, they're historical murder mysteries, rather like the sort of C.J. Sanson and Matthew Shardlake books. But these are set in the Georgian period. It's a time which isn't very well represented, I don't think, in detective fiction, because I think people think it's a bit boring compared with the Tudors and all the religious strife and wars and the danger of those times.
Mhm.
But in fact, it is a fascinating period, is the 18th century. And the murder mysteries are what you'd expect from a murder mystery. Plenty of murders, kidnaps, frantic chases, quite thrilling and entertaining, and hopefully page turners.
I definitely found it to be the case when I was reading it, so
Really good.
I can agree with that statement.
Oh, good.
So, what first inspired you to write the Archer series?
Well, I've been a fan of detective fiction for a very long time. With over 40 years of reading things, everything from the golden age of 1950s and Agatha Christie and the 30s and so on, right up to modern day gritty Scottish and Celtic noir, that sort of thing. And I thought that I could do as well
Mhm.
as a lot of authors that I'd read, and sometimes better than some. And so when I retired, I thought, right, this is the time to start a new career. So I decided I'd start writing. And having been teaching for nearly 40 years of English and drama, I knew enough about analysing and taking books apart to hopefully put them together for myself. And having taught drama, I thought that was a good insight and entry into the characters themselves,
Yeah.
because I could create those, and I've acted myself, and I can create other people's characters on stage. So I thought I'll have a go at creating my own.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful.
So yeah,
So,
that's
yeah. So, sorry, can go ahead?
yeah, that's just why I started writing, really.
Mhm.
And of course to keep me out of my wife's hair when I was retired.
So, you talked a little bit about the Georgian period, which is set, and is this
Yeah.
a particular period of history that you have an interest in?
Yes, I've always liked the 18th century. Ever since I was at school, I used to act in plays at school, and we did. I know it was a school for scandal, and She Stoops to Conquer. Sheridan and Goldsmith, those
Mhm.
sort of plays, and I just love the costume. I thought, yeah, I mean, this is great, and the plays themselves were very light-hearted and witty.
Mhm.
Shakespeare can be a bit heavy occasionally, but these showed me a world which was, um, well, light-hearted and witty, and I've loved it ever since. So yes, the 18th century is also a fascinating period. As I grew up, I learned more about it, and it's the sort of bridge between the Tudor period, where you've got all the religious wars and lots of danger and so on, which is what lots of authors like,
Mhm.
the constant jeopardy for the characters. And it's the bridge between that and the modern world. Because in the 18th century, all the trials about kings and commons and so on have largely been resolved. The parliament is dominant. They've got a king, a Hanoverian, who's really has to do what they say. You know, he's becoming the sort of king that we have today, you know, a constitutional monarch
Yeah.
who doesn't have any power of his own, unlike Henry VIII or, you know, those people. And therefore, the country is evolving, and people are beginning to think about the common man. You know, everyone has a say in the country, not just the nobles, not just, and well, the poor never had a say in the country, but the difference between rich and poor is gradually being eroded very slowly. And it's the rise of the middle class, you know, and this is where you get people who are philosophers, people who are very interested in the arts. I mean, it's the time when the British Museum was founded,
Yeah.
the 18th century. And you've got people questioning authority, satirists like Alexander Pope and Jonathan Swift, and cartoonists like Rowlandson. Some of the cartoons that he used to do of political and royal figures are quite scandalous, really. But it's where the common man is actually being able to sort of come into his own. At the same time, the 18th century is a time where there's incredible poverty, and people who are very privileged and rich at the top, that's still there. And it's a time for murder mysteries where you don't get the sort of modern day maverick detective with family problems at home and so on, who does things in the old fashioned way against authority. But you get a society which is like our own, becoming like our own, and yet very primitive. I mean, very few good roads, no plumbing, no running water, no street lighting. You know, it's still a fairly primitive society in that respect. But human beings are the same in any age. And, you know, the characters that you create and the ones that are real, because I use real historical figures as well. Jonathan Swift actually appears in one of the novels. David Garrick, the famous actor, King George II, who only really spoke German or spoke English with a very, very strong German accent. You know, so he's not really an English king. But you know, this sort of thing. I use real historical characters and the fictionalized ones and create that whole society.
Yeah.
Going on a bit now, aren't I?
Oh no, it's absolutely fascinating and definitely not a boring period after hearing all that.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, who's your favorite character that you've created in the series and why?
Well, it's got to be Will Archer, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because
The main man.
he's the main man. He's in all the novels. He starts off in the first novel at the age of 19. He's in David Garrick's company. He's been rescued from a Molly house, which is a homosexual brothel, really, where he was dumped by, well, I won't go into all the background there, but, you know, he's got that background, which is very different from most of the children of his age. And David Garrick rescues him from this. And unfortunately, he gets mixed up in a death in the theatre. An actor, a fellow actor, is found hanged in the theatre. And in investigating that, you know, because he thinks it can't be an accident, it wasn't suicide because he wasn't in suicidal mood. And in investigating that, he gets in much deeper than he thought, and eventually gets recruited as a secret agent, as an agent for the King George's head of the Secret Service, Sir William Harvey. He's a fictional character, though there was a Lord John Harvey, who I make his cousin,
Right, yeah.
who was very important in the Georgian court. And in the ensuing books, Will goes all over the place. He goes back to his native Yorkshire in the third book in the series, and managed to get his own back on the vicar who abused him and left him at the Molly House. He goes over to Ireland, to the theatre over there, and manages to get himself involved in a bomb plot to blow up Handel's Messiah, which had its first performance over in Ireland at the time. And then in later books, he is sort of kidnapped himself and dragooned into the army, and goes over to Europe, to the last battle in Europe that an English king actually took part in.
Oh, right. So actually fighting himself, yeah.
The Battle of Dettingen. And that's the last battle that an English king was present at. And then later on, he gets mixed up with Bonnie Prince Charlie when he came over and tried to invade England and regain the throne. And in the course of all this, he manages to find a lady that he loves, who appears in the first book and then in a couple of others later, but then loses her. So, it's a very personal story as well as a historical story.
Yeah.
All the time there's crimes going on, which he is looking into.
It's fascinating the way you can work in like real life history, make it more personal, and
That's right.
sounds like there's so many exciting adventures to follow, Archer. Yeah.
Well, I try to make them as exciting as possible. I mean, there's the historical detail there, but it doesn't take precedence. You've got to have a good, rollicking story.
Yes.
And characters around it. And he's got his own sort of domestic characters. The housemaid that he dallies with occasionally, and the lad that he's rescued himself from the streets, little Charlie.
Yeah.
And during the course of the novels, of course, they all grow up and go into their own lives. But I mean, Will starts at 19 years old in the first novel, and the one that I'm writing at the moment, he's in his 30s. He's just turned 30.
Right. So yeah.
And all the other characters are growing up with him. So, yeah, that's what it is.
Well, I think you might have already answered my next question in a way.
Right.
Do you plan any further books in the Archer series? And if so, can you let us know what to expect without revealing too many spoilers? It sounds like you're working on one right now, which is exciting news.
Yes, I'm about a third of the way through one at the moment. I haven't got a title for it yet, but it starts off with him being called to a house in Berkeley Square, which is quite posh, and there are two dead bodies there, one old lady and one maidservant.
Right.
And from that, it springs the whole idea of there's a sort of plot against a government minister who's going to become Lord Chief Justice. And well, that's about it. When I write, I have the initial idea. Sometimes I have an idea of what the ending's going to be, but generally I let my characters guide me through it, and quite often after about 80 or 90 pages, they tell me, this is going to happen,
Yeah.
or it can go that way. And I let them do that for me,
Yeah.
so that, I have no idea how the novel is going to progress. But even if I have a sort of vague end in mind. Yeah. So it's a half them and half me, really, in writing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that moment when the characters take over and tell you, like, speak in their own voice almost, it's an
That's right.
amazing feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the things about writing historical murder mysteries. You have to let them have their own voice, but it's not got to be specifically an 18th century way of expressing
Mm-hmm.
themselves, because modern readers would just find that totally tedious.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to read 18th century novels, um, even Jane Austen is, it's a very nice, refined language. But if you're going to Fielding and people like that,
Mm-hmm.
some of the sentences just go on forever. You think, where did that start? And you have to get them speaking the right language and using words which would have been right at the time.
Yes.
You can't use a lot of modern words. The word okay, which is such an easy word to use, you can't use,
Yeah, because it didn't
because
exist
they didn't
then.
have that word.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly sort of checking my etymological dictionary, to see, was that used in the 18th century? But hopefully they still speak in an easily readable way.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Good.
So all of your books in the Archer series are available at the Book Dragon in our shop in
Yes,
Stockton-on-Tees and also on our website, bookdragon.co.uk.
that's
And if
right. And they're £1 cheaper at least than on Amazon.
yes, that's right. So come and get them from the Book Dragon and save yourself some pennies.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Colin himself will be in our store tomorrow between 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. signing copies of his books. So come along and meet him and pick up some of his books and find out some of the exciting stories he's been talking about today.
Right. Thank you very much, Michelle.
And thank you too, Colin. It's been an absolute pleasure.